Our guest began on a family farm growing cotton, tobacco, watermelon, and peanuts. Today, he serves as the Chief Administrative Officer for an important state farm bureau. Join us as we explore how to defend and protect the vital agriculture industry and family farms.
Participate, engage, speak out, use your voice to be an effective advocate. The Voices in Advocacy podcast examines the diverse landscape of advocacy, exploring the ins and outs of building influence, driving change, and creating champion advocates. It's now time for the Voices in Advocacy podcast with your host, Roger Rickard.
Welcome to the Voices in Advocacy podcast, and I hope you're enjoying season 4. I'm Roger Rickard, president and founder of Voices in Advocacy, where we work with organizations to inspire, educate, engage, and activate your supporters by turning them into effective, influential advocates. And this is the podcast dedicated to the art of advocacy. This podcast is for the people that work and engage in advocacy efforts for their organizations, be they corporations, associations, trade organizations, and nonprofit cause groups. Now, let's get started. On today's show, we speak with Jeffrey Harvey, the Chief Administrative Officer for the Georgia Farm Bureau Companies. Now, in this role, Harvey works with the Farm Bureau President and senior leadership to develop and implement the company's strategic management plan. He also oversees the day-to-day functions of the company. Before being appointed as CAO, Jeffrey managed the Georgia Farm Bureau state and national lobbying efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Jeffrey Harvey to today's show. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Roger. I appreciate that warm introduction and reception. It's an honor to be with you today. So thank you.
Well, Jeffrey, the pleasure is mine, and you're a first because it's the first time I've been called Mr. Roger on the show. So I greatly appreciate that.
My mother would not be happy. She would not be proud of me if I didn't have my manners today. So thank you.
Well, that I am sure of, and she can be mighty proud. Hey, you grew up on a family farm. So tell us a little bit about that experience.
Oh, it was great. Well, as anyone who's grown up on the farm, they later in life appreciate the lessons and the work ethic that you learn. Maybe as a child and growing up, I didn't have the same level of appreciation for it because it was hard work. But it was, I wouldn't change it. I've got an 8-year-old son, and he's going to be a city boy. And I kind of hate that he's not going to get to experience some of the things that I did growing up, but it was great. Just bonding with family and working with my brothers, and the days were long and tough, but we learned so much from it. And it's funny, just yesterday I was telling one of my colleagues, we were talking about, we rode by a cattle farm, and we were talking about the various cows, and I admit my knowledge of all the different breeds and are limited, but I told him I knew a lot about those T-posts and how to drive them into the ground. And I knew a lot about grinding cow feed in the summer. So maybe that started my experience in agriculture, is the hard work. And, I went off to school to pursue a business degree, and then somehow life happens, and I end up back here at Farm Bureau. And it's been the greatest blessing that I can ever wish for. I've enjoyed my 20 years here.
Well, it's funny. The first thing I stuck on when you were saying that was bonding with your brothers. A shared, maybe painful experience of the hard work together that you had to do, and taking care of the fence and driving those fence posts and doing the feed and everything else. I think it's a good quality experience. Mine was not quite the same, but yet it had certain components because my father was raised on a farm. And so I was taught that discipline very, very early or else.
Yes.
Yeah. So you said now 20 years with Farm Bureau. You began with Georgia Farm Bureau as a legislative specialist, and then later basically ran its public policy as the public policy director. Now, how does that background inform you on the decisions you have to make now as the CAO in your role with Georgia Farm Bureau?
I think it really prepared me for what I'm still learning to do now. I've been in this role officially since December, and our previous CAO retired the end of January, John Huffmaster, and John's kind of like a father to me. So I jokingly say that I probably know more about John than anybody else at Farm Bureau. So he successfully did this job. He successfully did my former job because he hired me back in 2001 as that legislative specialist and really taught me everything I know about Farm Bureau and about the legislative process and just learning as you go. For your listeners and for you as well, we all know that the stuff that happens at the Capitol, they don't teach you that in school. You have to learn. You try to partner with people who would help serve as a mentor to you and teach you the ropes and keep you out of trouble. And I had those type of mentors at the state capitol, and John was that mentor for me at Farm Bureau, because for those of you listening who are familiar with Farm Bureau, you can get in just as much trouble within the organization as you could at the state capitol. So he taught me the ropes here and taught me how to run that public policy department. And I really enjoyed that work. It was so much fun and so rewarding. And it taught me an appreciation of the farmer members and the real reason why we're here and why we're founded. A lot of people know us as an insurance company, but because that's a very valuable service we provide to a lot of members. But we were founded in 1937 to be that voice of the farmer. And that every day that I walked into that Capitol, I felt the weight of our 40,000 farmers here on my shoulders, that I was their spokesman and I was their voice, and I was the roadblock for anything bad that was coming through legislatively to keep that from hitting them on the farm. And, that childhood experience and growing up on the farm, I always related our members to my dad or my grandfather, my great-grandfather. Those are the type of people that we represent, and I didn't want to let them down. So I enjoyed it.
There are a couple things there. First of all, talking about the weight of having the 40,000 farmers on your shoulders, a lot of people assume that when we go in and we advocate or we lobby on behalf of something, it's always like we have our hand out, we want something. And that's not necessarily always the truth at all. It's more of, hey, please don't hurt us. Please don't do anything that's detrimental that you may not realize at the time is detrimental to the farm, because you're trying to do something else that's positive. And it's that educational process. And I was kind of chuckling to myself because it reminded me, when you said what you don't learn in school, it reminded me of, I worked in the Senate of Pennsylvania as a young man, and boy, do your eyes get opened quickly. And I mean, literally like day 3, after I figured out where my desk was and where to go get lunch. After that, you wake up real quick to the activity that's going on in the tug and pull of all different types of people.
Right. Yeah. And you say to yourself, well, they didn't teach me that in Poli-Sci 101. So
or 201 or 301 or 401. Right. I mean, right. It's a different thing. So with that, and having had John as your mentor the whole way through all this process, what are the biggest challenges that you have today in your job?
I think the biggest challenge is probably membership. I just left from a membership meeting actually to come join the podcast, and it's something that's always on our mind. We are a membership organization, and the challenge, and I'm sure other associations understand this complaint or this struggle, is that we provide a very valuable service, and we're the eyes and ears for many members at state capitol, and we're that safeguard where we're trying to keep the bad things from happening. And a lot of times, if we do our job well, you never even know that this was a concern. And we take pride in that. And we, there's those occasions where we do pass legislation, and we celebrate that. But there's so many things that we work on and we gauge on that never surfaces, and that's by design. So that, and maybe I need to back up.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Membership's always a concern, because that's who you're serving. And
right.
So one way or the other, you want to be able to serve them correctly and meet their needs, so that it validates their engagement and their involvement as a member of your organization.
Right. And then maybe in today's society, people want something that's tangible. And, we're providing this service, and you may or may not see the benefits of it immediately. And even within farmers, trying to convince them that you need to help support this. It's $35 a year. Some of the programs that we've implemented in the state of Georgia, our GATE program, for example, we've got a sales tax exemption program for all ag inputs. And I mentioned John earlier, when we reformed that bill back in 2011 or 12. John wrote it at his desk. The majority of the bill he wrote, and I sat beside him while he did it. And that bill puts money directly back into farmers' pockets, 7 cents on every dollar that they spend on equipment, seed, feed, fertilizer. And fertilizer is as crazy as it is right now, how expensive it is. Every dollar they spend, they save 7 cents. And if that program wasn't put in place and protected by Farm Bureau on an annual basis, because there's people in other parts of the state that are always gunning for that. If we were not protecting that, then it wouldn't be available. And just trying to convince even farmer members the value of being engaged and being a part of our organization, because we work to save those things that you benefit from, is difficult. It's always a challenge.
So basically, depending on the size of the farm, that could be tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings, and you're asking for $35 to be a part of that. And the ability
Right.
to quantify what that amount is, to me, that's a no-brainer.
Right.
So can you come and get me 7 cents on the dollar for everything I expend to try to run my business? I'd like that a lot.
But you may need to move it down to Georgia, and we can get you a gate card as long as you qualify. So,
okay, I'll work hard to qualify. So we're talking about influence here and the ability to be able to do that. Why is political influence so important to the family farm? You gave a great example there with just that one bill. Can you give me another example of that?
Oh, well, as far as programs, I could probably go even further. A lot of the things we've worked on over the years, and also we massaged the programs over time, which I've had a hand in. Some of these things were put in place, like the CUVA program, our conservation use program. As farmers, we're land rich. By the nature of the business, we need a lot of land to operate or rent a lot of land, and property taxes continue to go up. The value of land is going up, and it's a good problem to have until the tax bill comes. In the late 90s, and almost every year, there's something to do. We're either fighting a bill that might hurt our conservation use program or help it. But the program essentially says if you pledge that you will not put a shopping center on your farm for the next 10 years, then we will value that property at its use value versus its fair market value. And that program alone, you sign up for this 10-year period of time, it would return tens of thousands of dollars to you. Farm Bureau helped lead the constitutional amendment in the 90s to put that in place. And again, every year patrolling to make sure nothing bad happens. Water related issues. Our most recent victory, we had a bill signed, and the governor signed the bill last week, but it's an update to our right to farm legislation. We saw this in North Carolina and a number of the other states where I think your environmental groups have partnered up with your trial lawyers, and they have seen an opportunity to go after something that's very subjective, nuisance, sound, smells, dust, things like that, things that are just very common occurrences on the farm, and people that move in next to them, as soon as they want to live by the farm until they actually do, and they realize there's some things that go on they were not aware of. And then I'm not going to move back out of the country. I'm going to shut you down. And we've seen this all over the country, and it had ramped up here in Georgia. We fought for that legislation for, 3 years. And we celebrated that passage this year and signed the bill last week. So it's those type of things. And for a lot of farmers, probably a lot of these are problems they don't even know exist. And we try to get ahead of them before they're a real problem. And that's just a couple of examples. I could probably go all day on those.
Yeah. Well, I had the privilege of speaking to your county presidents in early February, and I know a week later you were going to the state capitol
Right.
to lobby on things. Tell people how many people you roughly brought to the state capitol that week.
It was one of our best turnouts in my tenure at Farm Bureau. I know we had over 600 people there, and we converge from all of our counties. We've got 159 counties in the state, and members from almost every county attended. And our whole goal is, we'll bring them in and we'll give them a little orientation that morning on the key issues. And we encourage them to go talk to their elected officials, their House members and senators, and just work on those issues. And we come back, and at lunch, we have keynote addresses from the governor and our ag commissioner and our chairman of our House and Senate ag committees. And it's just, even we get the question regularly, okay, we brought 600 people here. It costs money to do that. What do we get from that? And I would answer this question that there are no other groups that I've witnessed in the state of Georgia that bring 600 people to the Capitol on their own dime. Now, a lot of other organizations have paid employees. It's like a day off for them. They're still getting paid to go and to advocate. Our members are coming on their own dime. They're taking time away from their farm to come. That sends a message. And I think the legislators recognize that. And if nothing else, the perception of how strong the ag industry is in our state, that's worth the money.
Yeah. And by having people from every county, then your ability to have a touch point with every single member really matters, and to be able to get that message out. I was blown away by that. And by the way, as we mentioned, that I was there at your meeting about a week prior to that, you had the people that were at that meeting writing the notes and the postcards and getting ready for that. And I'm coming to see you, and I'll see you and have an opportunity to chat with you. That carries an awful lot of weight as well.
Since you mentioned that, I wish I had a screenshot I could throw up here, but we took those postcards and we delivered those to our House and Senate Ag Committee chairman. And when we got the bills to the full floor of both chambers, those chairmen took those cards, and a couple hundred of those, and stood in the well and hold them up. And we've got photos of him holding our cards up, making his speech as to why this is important. And that's a message we've got to reassure our members as well. We ask them to do these things and they do them. And, do we get any benefit?
Yeah. And from time to time, they wonder, well, is this effective, or is this just a dog and pony show? And yet
right.
we all know the power and the effectiveness of that. And that's a different form of messaging. But it also gives them a great opportunity to tell their personal story of things that are going on. And even if it's just to say to them, listen, this is my farm, this is what I do, this is the size, this is the number of herd, this is, the yield from the crop, whatever they add to that equation makes it great. So how important is that personal storytelling?
It's tremendous. And I know you've spent a career examining the best ways to communicate and to advocate elected officials. And there's various ways to do it, as you know. And early on, we ventured down this road of, okay, we've got 40,000 farmers in this state. If we could just get them to engage in any way, that will really move the needle. You've been in elected officials' offices when their administrative assistants' phones are ringing, the emails are blowing up. It gets their attention, and that immediately gets the members' attention. So our initial approach was, okay, let's go down this route. I don't love form letters, but they get attention. And I think there's a time for doing that. We've got 23,000 of our people signed up where we advertise 3 clicks and you can communicate with your elected official. We're going to have the pre-written letter that gets attention, but it's not as effective as quality communications. So we think of it in terms of quantity and quality. And, when you're in the last day and you need a big push the day before the bill is scheduled for a vote, yeah, you can push the button and get 23,000 or activate the email campaign. And that's good to hopefully push you over the edge. But you never get to that point without quality communications. And our goal is to work with our members, and we start with young farmers. And everyone we talk to, the goal is to develop that personal relationship where I can pick up my cell phone and I can text my elected official and they know we've got a relationship. And there's a communication there. They're very busy. You don't need to call them and keep them on the phone for 45 minutes. You can do that in the off season and develop that relationship for when you need to activate it. And it needs to be a respectful relationship. You need to say thank you. They need to hear thank you. And, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. The approach needs to be respectful. You need to develop that relationship for when it's time to cash in on it.
And each individual elected policymaker weighs things differently. A phone call to the office may be worth a certain score. A form letter is worth a certain score, but the personal story or the visit or the relationship, and each one ramps up to a different level. And they know the impact because they know how often people don't reach out to them on the everyday issues that happen. And then all of a sudden things blow up in front of them. That gets their attention quite quickly.
And I've seen it blow up in the offices. I've been sitting in there, and the common person may think blow up is 150 phones. The phone's constantly. It may take 4 or 5 key people. Maybe sometimes not even that many. And then their minds, they get real squirrely, is what I would say. It makes them nervous. That's right. It gets their attention, and they think this is a big issue. I've gotten 4 calls from people that I respect and have a relationship with. That's all it takes to move the needle. That's and right. In their mind, that's blowing up, but it's not much.
That's right. You're absolutely right. People don't realize that it doesn't take hundreds of thousands or millions. It just takes the right people at the right time with the right relationships that are very respectful of each other.
That's right.
What was the best professional tip you ever received in your career?
Oh Lord. God, I could start with all the various cliches, don't burn a bridge, listen more than you talk. I don't. God, that's a tough one.
I almost think that it was taught on the farm.
Well, my dad,
I think it was the discipline.
Yeah, I mean, my dad, I can still hear him in my ear, and I catch myself becoming my dad with my son. Is through hard work you can do anything. And we're blessed to live in a country where we're free to pursue and do anything. There's nothing that holds us back as long as we're willing to put in the work to accomplish it. And maybe that's, I guess, if there's ever been something that I've tried to live my life by, that's been the most helpful, because I'm not the smartest guy in the room. And you probably would agree with that already, but I'm not afraid to put in the work. And I think most anybody that's willing to do those, put in what it takes to get there, can accomplish anything. And it's the same thing with advocacy. It takes a little work and it takes a little time, but if you dedicate it to that, you can accomplish anything.
So speaking of advocacy, as we're getting ready to close this down, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the word advocacy?
I think lobbying, just because I've been a registered lobbyist for 20 years. It's probably the more politically correct way of saying lobbying. When I was, early in my career, and people would ask me, well, what do you do for a living? And well, I work in governmental affairs, blah, blah, blah. They don't understand what that is. And you just say lobbyist, then sometimes I'd have to apologize, or it's ranked somewhere in there between a used car salesman and a trial lawyer, But I think advocacy is a good way of saying lobbying.
Yeah, you're using your voice, as you started the show with, talking about that. Time flies when you have a great guest, Jeffrey, and I know you're a busy man, and I really appreciate that. Any final thoughts, anything you'd like to add?
Just thank you. Number one, thank you. And I appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about Farm Bureau as an organization and how instrumental, I think, over time we have been in crafting policies and positions that have helped all of us on the farm and in agriculture. And I guess the importance of that is and how it relates to everyone, because we all eat, we all wear clothes that a lot of them are made out of cotton. We live in houses that are made from wood products. We need agriculture in our lives every day. And I think through Farm Bureau, we help preserve a lot of the things that people take for granted. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we do and what we've done over the years and about the organization. So thank you, Mr. Roger.
You're more than welcome, Mr. Jeffrey. How can people reach Georgia Farm Bureau for more information?
We've got a lot of information on our website at gfb.org. And if there's anything that I've said that might have sparked some more interest, or want to have a conversation about anything that's going on, they can call us at 1-800-342-1192.
That's wonderful. That's great to share both of those vehicles of doing that. Well, folks, that's a wrap of today's wonderful conversation with Jeffrey Harvey, the Chief Administrative Officer at the Georgia Farm Bureau. Thank you, Jeffrey, for being on the show today. And I wish you and all of your farmer members all the best. Let's face it, today's advocacy arena is just plain noisy. Organizations are stretched. You need every advantage to make sure your issue gets the attention it deserves and your voice heard. The RAP Index is the best way to do just that by finding your stakeholders' relationships and engagement power. Get past the noise. Know who your people know. Go to rapindex.com. That's rapindex.com and tell them Roger sent you for a special offer. If you like today's podcast, head over to where you find your podcasts and subscribe to the Voices in Advocacy podcast. A big thank you to today's guest. I appreciate your time and the unwavering passion for advocacy you have. Well, that's it for this episode of Voices in Advocacy. Remember, you have the power to be an effective, influential advocate. Now go out and make it a better world.
We hope you enjoyed today's Voices in Advocacy podcast and look forward to you joining us again next week. To learn more about Voices in Advocacy, go to our website, voicesinadvocacy.com.